Previously on Anything Goes.
So, Christina, there was a girl that listened to 2 episodes of the show, and she just said, "Is that true what the people on the show said about the girls that you like?" I swear to God. Really? And I just was like, "No, that's just they just take shots at me," because she thought it was like a shot at her own weight because I was interested in her.
Or at her own,
yeah. Pardon?
Dave. Was she tender about it? Was she upset?
She was not thrilled.
Did she throw herself at some food when she was upset?
No, just in front of a subway train, which is the way you like it, Darren. She's dead now because of the things that you said.
Honestly, you guys,
you told her what I find attractive in women, and she killed herself. And honestly, I hope you're happy.
Well, then don't find that attractive, Dave.
Oh, so it's my fault what makes my dick hard, huh?
Well, I guess it is.
I was
is it
born
my fault?
This way.
Is there a little fucking system that I'm cranking a crank at the bottom of your cock to make it go hard?
No, but you're poisoning the minds of the women that I might find attractive and trying to get with.
We're cock blocking Dave Martin.
It was a serious cock block.
Serious, wow.
Serious XM cock block.
Yeah, it's an XM cock.
Channel 153.
Is it? Wow, whole channel's cock blocking Dave.
It is. Well, you two are at the end of that cock. Shoving it in slowly.
Yeah, well.
You two are the balls that are driving the cock that's not letting me get any pussy.
And now, let's get to a new exciting show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Are you ready for some laughs? Are you?
Guess which host has to start their car with a breathalyzer? This is Anything Goes with Darren Frost.
How the fuck am I funny?
Dave Martin.
What have we got here? A fucking comedian.
And Kathleen McGee.
And I'll execute every motherfucking last one of you!
Can you dig it?
The intro to the show this week is another one that I think will probably the stuff off the top with. It's the one where I think it's you, Christina Walkinshaw, and Steve Patterson are bothering me about. I think what happens is that if I'm in a relationship, someone will listen to the show, and then they'll have some moment with me where they'll say, "I don't think I'm going to listen to your show anymore." I'm like, "Are we breaking up?" And they're like, No,
I just don't want to listen to you.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. Right.
But that has happened actually 3 times. So this might be another one.
How many women have you dated? How many women have you dated? Like seriously dated, not like a couple weeks, but like relationships with.
Well, at least 3.
Yeah.
Like long term, like sort of relationship.
I mean, like
over a year.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe like 5 or 6. No, more than that. I have I don't know what this says about me, but I have a book where it's all written down.
Of course you do. You have a book. You have a book of a lot of things that are written down.
Yeah. And it's got a lot of stickers in it. A lot of stickers.
A lot of check marks and X's and things like that. But even I was listening to the beginning of the episode this week, and even I'm sort of listening, going like, "Wow, man! If I could speak to myself, I would be like, Dave, you're overreacting, really. You should really calm down a little bit, get a little self-confidence and stuff."
That should be your epitaph, Dave. That should be your epitaph. Whoa, Dave, you're overreacting.
Or it would just say, "I overreacted a lot." And then whatever, 72 or 70, I can still play 38 on TV. But yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, well.
One time in Ottawa when you got really drunk, Darren, and I went back to my hotel and you like called me and you're like, "You get your fucking ass back here!" And you were buying everybody.
Yeah.
It was
amazing.
That's Kathleen, I can't believe you. No man left behind. You can't just abandon someone. All right, well, yeah. I
didn't abandon him. I think. No, I went I went with some people from the audience across the street or something.
Yeah. And then I think you came back and you couldn't find me, so then you left.
Yeah.
But I wasn't where you thought I was, and that's when I called you. Then you came back. I spent like $300 that night.
Yeah, you were like my boyfriend whenever he drinks. He's like, I'm the king of the world. I'm a billionaire. I'm gonna buy everyone drinks.
And you guys were partying with audience members?
Oh yes.
I was. I remember going with these people across to Lieutenant's Pump.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You know that bar?
Yeah.
And I went with them, and then I went, and one of them. So I went with them up there, and they were having a house party.
Well, I don't know. I know
it was a
yeah.
pretty room. Let's shoot Scott. I don't recommend it.
No. I always feel like I have to live up to whatever I was
On stage.
like a quarter of me on stage.
Yeah.
And then it's like I think it was in St. John, we got invited to a house party, and I think Darren might have been with me, and then it ended up just being myself and Darren and the other comic who was on the show with us. We're just hanging out in the kitchen. And then everybody at this house party was like, hey, who are these three guys? Because only 2 people showed up from the show and then just brought the 3 of us.
Right.
And so now it's like we're 3 strangers that like nobody knows and they're looking at us weird. And I'm like, well, and it's like, it's you can't really relax either because it's.
I remember one time I was with Andrew Iwanek in Grand Prairie, and that sentence is never going to be said again. And I hated the town. And I hated the shows. And I had to go out with him because these girls wanted to take us out. So I had to be Andrew's wingman in a town I didn't want to be a wingman in. And we ended up going back to a house, and there's a stripper pole and all this, and it's crazy. And I'm like, okay, it's like 3:00 in the morning, 4, we got to go, Andrew. Then on the way back, I'm like, Andrew's like, yeah, I wasn't really even interested. I'm like, what the fuck? Why didn't you tell me that?
Oh, Andrew would just string you along all night long.
Yeah.
No,
House parties or a no. You never go to a house party. Like I think I did that once. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna go to house parties ever again. I'll go to a bar close by.
Right.
Something like that. But I don't go to people's house parties after shows because it always ends up weird. Although the house in Newfoundland has probably seen some shit.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that condo.
The house condo? Oh yeah.
Oh,
out of all the condos that I ever stayed in, I'm pretty sure the one in Newfoundland saw the most ridiculous shit. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And there was always like stuff hidden. There was like a on top of the cupboards. There was always like pot hidden up there.
Yep.
Yeah, there would be some comic that would like leave a joint or something like that. You'd always appreciate if someone left like some groceries, not a lot, but even like a half a loaf. Even if it was the 2 ends of the loaf that were saved and then just in a plastic bag. If anything was there, you kind of appreciated it. But I never liked, even if the club was attached to a bar, that was always the best.
Yeah.
Right.
But like once you leave that, it's sort of like,
well, you're not a comedian anymore. You're just a regular person, and then you're a stranger with these people.
Yeah. I don't want to be a regular person. They stink.
No, being regular people, you sometimes you have to buy your own self drinks, and it's not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's the worst. I don't want to. It's
And your jokes don't fly as good, and they don't really care.
No. I'm still spritzing with them over at the. I'm talking to everybody for 30 seconds, and it's like, oh, and what do you do for a living? Oh, really?
Right.
Oh, how'd that work out? And I go,
Good luck with that, dummy. And what about you?
Yeah.
How do you fuck her? How do you fuck her? Doing crowd work,
Yeah, I'm reminding them across the street to tip their waitstaff.
Yeah.
No, Newfoundland was always I got recognized at a bar in Newfoundland. Like I went out with Paul Meyerhog and we went to Lottie's on George Street.
That's a good place. Go there.
It's the best. Although at the end of the night, it's just piles of curdled puke because their specialty is a White Russian.
Yeah.
But I was there, and these 2 guys came up to me, and they were like, "You're a comedian," and I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "We saw you like a few months ago when you were here, like the last time I was there." And I was like, I never get recognized, so I'm like, this is cool. And then I wanted to hang out with them, and then Paul's like, "We're going," and I'm like, I don't want to go. There's 2 guys that think I'm funny and pretty. I'm staying.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "No, we're leaving," and he dragged me out and made me leave. And I was so mad at him. I was so mad at him for doing that. And then the next night, he like invited 8 guys over, and he's like, pick one of them.
Wow.
That's a good guy to go on the road with.
Sure. That's your own reality TV show right there. Pick 8 guys with Kathleen McGee.
Choose 1 or 2, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
I think I was in it was either Edmonton and Calgary once, and I was like smoking a cigarette. So this was like a long time ago, outside of the club. And then 2 people sort of remembered me from the show, and then I saw one. And then I saw an SUV pull up. Oh, this was Calgary, so I saw an SUV pull up in front of the club,
It's
and
always
I saw
Calgary.
Huh?
Crazy stuff always is in Calgary, but go on, yeah.
Right. So, and it's a casino too. So it's sort of like I see this SUV pull up. One of the guys runs into the SUV, and then immediately just sort of jumps out. And I'm talking to his girlfriend, and so I jokingly like, what was that all about? What was going on? And they're like, hey man, you want to come party with us? And I was like, yeah, sure, all right. And then it's sort of like and then we already was drinking, and then we went somewhere else, and then we drank, and they might have had some cocaine on them. And,
maybe.
Yeah, it's Calgary. It's Calgary.
Yeah. And so at a certain point, it's like, and also I'm not really, I'm loaded, but also I'm very awake too, awake enough to realize at a certain point, I don't know who any of these fucking people are, and I barely know how to get back to the condo, and I don't even know exactly what bar I'm at, and then it was just like, oh, I gotta go. This is not. I was well enough to get the hell out of there. So.
I like your Newfoundland story. I like Dave's Newfoundland story with the bouncer.
Which one is that?
Oh, the one where you puked all over his car?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that one.
Every time I went back, you're like, oh, you know Dave Martin. He puked on me.
Oh, right. Well, Derek, that's a part of Derek's Against Act now, because it literally was like that scene from Pulp Fiction. Like we were pulling up to, like when John Travolta shoots the guy's head off. It was like we were pulling up to the hotel. Derek had gotten out of the car, and then I'm literally 10 seconds, and it was just boom everywhere. And then, of course, I just get out of the car. I'm like, sorry, can't help. Bye. And
you're such a dick. Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah, of course I am. Of course.
You're drunk.
I'm not. So.
One time in Calgary, I'm not sure if I told you guys this story or not. I was, before getting there, this is when I was single, living on my own in Toronto, in case my wife is watching. And I'm on the internet, and I'm talking in all these crazy groups. This is back when I had all kinds of crazy situations going on, and I met this group, and they were Calgary swingers, and I got them all into the club one night, like 20 of them, and I bombed. I did not do well. I middled, and I bombed. And so I go to this table because they're trying to thank me for the tickets, and nobody will make eye contact with me because I bombed. And they were all like misshaped headed people, and like one was an albino and
not attractive swingers.
No, Calgary swingers. And then one of them literally goes, "So are you coming back to the party?" And then you saw someone give him the elbow, like, "Shut up!" And I'm like, "Party? Sure." So then I get into a van and I drive to the middle of fucking nowhere in Calgary to some swinger house, and we all go in the house. And there's a hot tub, everybody gets naked, and nobody fucks because I'm there. And they're all just staring at me, waiting for me to leave, and I never leave. And they have a pet parakeet in the bathroom, and every time you went to the bathroom, it would yell at you, "You're a dirty bird, you're a dirty bird." Like this, it was the fucking weirdest thing. And then finally at 5 a.m., they got me a cab to go home, and nobody fucked.
Wow.
Calgary is threesome city. I've had the most threesomes in Calgary.
Well,
threesomes, you go to Calgary.
Right.
But
oil money. It's all that oil money. It just
okay. But I am doing a swingers club on Saturday. I'm doing a swingers club show on Saturday.
Like
I don't think they're allowed
in Edmonton?
Yeah, in Edmonton. I don't think they're allowed to swing, but they're allowed to socialize.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, what if someone started getting a blowjob while you're on stage?
I've done swingers. This is probably
would you stop them, or would you just be like, is that the equivalent of being on a cell phone and texting during a show when you're at a swingers club?
I mean, I've been at a show where there's like people making out, and I always am like, would you stop making out? I mean, like, I know my act is sexy, but fucking stop.
Yeah, right.
But, yeah, no, I've never had that problem. I mean, if someone was gonna blow someone in the audience while I was on stage, I'd be like, good for you.
Yeah.
But all the Swingers Club shows that I've ever done, it's not. It's all the fun stuff happens after the show.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, would you be more would you be more upset with someone using their cell phone and texting during the show, or someone getting blown?
Well, at least when you're getting blown, you can still kind of pay attention, right?
And there's no light. And there's no light flashing up.
Yeah, it's not that distracting.
Yeah, but if someone giving the blowjob and someone, huh?
Have you ever been in a swingers club?
Me?
Yeah, either of you.
Oh, I have.
I have not.
I've been to that Aqua Lounge in Toronto twice.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that place. But so when I did the Green Door in Las Vegas, it was like Jason Rouse was on that show, and a whole bunch of Howard. What's his name?
Howard Dover. Howard Dover put it together.
Yes,
yeah.
Howard Dover put it together, and it was like there was this room where only couples could go, and if you weren't in a couple, you had to stand in this other part of it that had so it was like screen, so you couldn't really make out people's faces, but you could see
that's called the Dave Martin area. Keep going.
That's where Dave can sit and watch.
Yay! You can do it! I would cheer. I would heckle. If there were two people fucking, I would heckle.
We were in there. I went in with this other comic. We're like, well, we'll just say we're a couple and just go in and see what it's like. And we just were in there, sitting in there, talking, and it's kind of weird in swingers clubs how quickly it just doesn't feel weird that people are having sex around you. How all of a sudden you're talking about the weather, and it's like you get desensitized really fast. But this was the best part. We were all sitting in that room, and then like from the outside, we heard someone yell, "Oh no, did I disappear?" Okay. When we were sitting in the room with them, from the outside, we heard somebody yell out, "Dad!" And it turned out it was Jason Rose, but it was very funny because people literally stopped fucking. Like it was, and then they're like, "Oh."
That's great.
That Swingers Club, if you ever have a chance to go, it is 100% worth it. The Green Door. I don't know if it's still the same. Like I don't know how they run it anymore.
I don't know.
Levels, there's like 20 rooms, there's all these like these rooms that are like, it's like a stable, and then you can go into each of the stalls, and if the rope is down, you can join whatever's happening, and if the rope's up, you can watch. There's like a medical room with like medical stuff. It's crazy. It's a weird place, but it's pretty cool. Like I would say, and it's funny because like I interviewed the guy who was the manager at the time on my old podcast, and he said most of the people that come are teachers. They're people who can't be like wild and crazy in their regular life. They have to be like, but they come to Vegas, they go to the Green Door, and they fuck everyone.
Okay, Dave, before you continue, we got just about 2 minutes, and then Casey's coming in, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, I was going to say at the Aqua Lounge in Toronto, on the top, you have to be in a couple to go to the top floor. And on the top floor, in one of the rooms, they have like an old panel van cut in half, and the doors are wide open like this. So if you ever wanted to fuck someone in the back of a van,
or do a puppet show, you could do a puppet show there.
Well, I don't. I guess you could, but
you don't see a lot of like really young swingers either. Like you don't like they're always like in their 30s or older. And I understand now that I'm older, because like when I first went, I was 24 or 25 when I went, and I'm like, this is gross, oh my god, this is creepy. But like now I'm like, I'll go and do it, whatever. It's like I'm old now and I don't care.
Well, I did notice that the clientele got a lot better good looking as the night went on, because I got there, when I went there,
you got there what, 11 a.m.?
Yeah, to get a good seat. The popcorn's fresh. No, when I went there, it was like I got there like 4 o'clock in the afternoon with the girl I was seeing, and then as around 8 o'clock, there was a significant change in the attractiveness.
Oh yeah, it's like strippers, day strippers versus night strippers. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah. And did you get recognized in the swingers place that you were at?
When not like the one they did. I've only gone when I've done shows. So
okay, yeah.
I did one in Edmonton, and they were like, these 3 guys come up to me, and the cool thing about swingers clubs is that you can't get harassed. If you say no, they are not allowed to ask you ever again.
Right.
You ask them to leave you alone, they have to. There are rules, which is like, it makes it just so much nicer because like you go to a bar and there'll be a guy that's drunk and he will not leave you alone. Mm-hmm. I've been in green rooms where comics are drunk and they do not leave you alone. Like,
right.
But at the swingers club, if you say no, they can't keep asking. So after the show, these 3 guys came up to me and they're like they were like old enough to be my dad at the time, and they're like, well, you did a really great show down here, and now you want to go do a show upstairs? And I'm like, no, thank you.
Yeah. No, there was someone who was like not a bartender, but like I guess some like a bar back, a busboy or something like that.
Yeah.
Because they have a bar at the Aqua Lounge, and just out of nowhere, someone asks me like from over my shoulder, it's like, hey, so you doing any shows while JFL's in town? And I was just like, oh, fuck, because you really want to go there and just be completely anonymous.
Sure.
It's like one of those weird things. If you see someone there and you do know them, you're sort of like, shh, okay, let's, or
just you nod your head, and we're not going to speak of this again.
I know you, you know me.
That's why, like, you can't. If I've never ever, when I've done shows, like, wanted to do anything there because it's too weird. It's way too weird. If I was like just went to a swingers club on my own, then I could do stuff, but not if they like know me as the comedian. Like it's weird.
Yeah, I just want to be just a guy fucking who he's with when I'm there, and it's sort of weird. It's sort of like
that's not swingers club.
Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Well, I'm not going to go there.
Just one I'm with.
I just don't want to be a comedian while I'm there. I'm not going to start trying to sell merch or anything like that.
Yeah.
Hey, here's my new DVD, or come and see me at my shows.
Yeah.
And it's like just sort of want to be just like a person. Just that's.
Yeah, I can social distance. I've got an 8-foot dildo. We're fine, right?
Well, there's a comic in Calgary named Dale Ward, and he's the one that's been setting up, and he swings. Like, he, like, does the show, and then afterwards sticks around and swings. But I could not do that. It would be too weird.
Well, I know the one in Toronto. It's like, if you're a single guy, you can only go there on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. But every other day of the week, every guy has to come there with a partner.
Right.
And I think women can go there anytime they want.
They don't care about
Yeah.
But women aren't usually going to be, well, maybe some of them are going to be weird. Who knows? Like at the Green Door, you can pay, I think it's like, if you're a single guy, it's like $100 American to get in.
Yeah.
Regardless of the day of the week. Maybe weekdays it's a little bit cheaper, but women, it's like $20 to get in, and then couples pay. But yeah, no, like a single guy, I think that single men have just like not given themselves a good reputation for being under control in a swingers club. You know, I was standing in the swingers club watching something, and I felt something hitting the side, and there was a guy standing next to me, and I was like, oh, so I just moved over, and then he moved closer, and I looked, and he was jerking off and staring at me.
Well,
and you're not allowed to do that. Like, you're not supposed to.
And Kathleen, I just want to say that I'm so sorry about that. I'm so sorry I did that.
Yeah.
I was flattered. Trust me, I was flattered. But it is weird when something like that happens to you, because it's just uncomfortable.
Hey, this is Doug Stanhope, and you're listening to Darren Frost and Friends on Anything Goes XM Radio.
Casey Corbin.
Hello.
There we go.
Hey, Casey, what color are your walls painted?
What's that?
What color are your walls painted?
Blue?
Oh, okay, cool.
It's like a hunter green.
No, it's a blue, I think.
You guys have the same shirt on.
Same shirt on.
I know.
Same shirt as what? Who's
Can
got
you
the
see
same shirt?
Dave.
You and
Dave
me.
does.
Is Dave wearing his Hot Rod shirt?
Yeah.
Can't you
Yeah.
see it?
That's
Can't
why I
you see
wore
Dave?
mine. Yeah, I wore mine too. So.
Woo!
Actually, I got black sleeves put on mine because I wanna be an individual. So.
Oh, is that because of the WrestleMania where Piper was half black?
That's the one.
That's exactly it.
Wait. Why is Kathleen in an 80s rock video?
Because I should always be.
Because she was. Because she was born to be, Casey. How dare you question?
How dare I? So sorry.
I mean, I've always wanted to be a White Snake girl, so.
No. If we know you love Van Halen, so it's Hot for Teacher episode. So
It's all good.
The kindergarten
all hair
teacher.
metal's great. So I love all hair metal. It's awesome.
You should get a fan too, and then you can be blowing in the wind.
Make sure you add that second part, in the wind.
In the wind.
Yeah.
And add in the wind to everything.
Well, if I could get fans, I could get blowing. It's very possible.
Yeah.
Very possible. It's just getting the fans.
Yes.
So,
I have to commend you. Casey so far has my favorite backdrop of every guest that we've had.
Yes.
Casey has this is my favorite so far.
Well, this is where, if we're doing wrestling, I do all my wrestling interviews from my wrestling wall that's behind me.
I don't know if you checked out the other episode, Casey. Mark Breslin had 8x10s of all the comics' dreams he's crushed behind him. So that was very...
You know what the worst of it all is? I didn't even fucking make it. And that's just really sad.
You're on the ground. You got to wait for him to die, and then you be put up. There you go.
It's just there's in the back you can kind of see at Breslin's there's a waterfall of headshots that just go right into a paper shredder.
Wouldn't it be funny if he just had it on a rotary and it could actually do that?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be great.
One thing that sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the reasons we wanted to have you on is we wanted to talk about kind of like the parallels to, because I watch a lot of documentaries, and the one thing I love about wrestling documentaries, I'm not a big wrestling guy. Like, I don't actually follow real wrestling, but even if it was like a 14-hour documentary on the Ultimate Warrior, I probably would sit and watch it because of the comparisons and the parallels to stand-up. And you're a big wrestling fan and a huge stand-up as well. So I wanted to have you come on and talk a little bit about that, because you've interviewed a lot of wrestlers, and when you after talking to them, do you see a lot of that parallel in their life?
Yes, I do. But one thing before I even start is, like, when I think of you and I think of what you do within the confines of comedy and the character work and the definition of who you are, it is wrestling. Like
100%.
Yeah. You know, like you are very Kaufman-esque in who you are, and you know, so it's like, so, you know, where you might not even watch wrestling, you have a lot of wrestling philosophy in your act.
Yeah. No, for sure. Sometimes it's me against them. Yeah.
You want to be a heel, and then you want to win them over. You know, and that is storytelling at its best. And that's where a lot of these wrestlers, who I've been lucky to do first shows with Ted DiBiase and Ricky Steamboat and a few others, and it's like they already know how to tell a story. They've been doing it for years and years and years in the ring. They already know how to play a character. They've been doing that. It's just a matter of transitioning and making it a vocal, like, word performance.
Right.
And Ricky Steamboat's first time, he went off talking about his love for his 1957 Thunderbird and this car, and he saved up. He finally got. It went on forever. Howard, still the club manager, comes over before the show, praises Ricky Steamboat. I'd never seen a fanboy come out of Howard ever before.
Right.
But it happened with Ricky Steamboat. After the show, you're gonna want to cut that whole car stuff. People don't want to hear it.
Right.
It was just Howard.
Right.
Yeah, and I was like, that's so Howard. He's just like,
yeah,
I don't care how much I love you. I'm gonna be honest with you when you're on my stage.
Right.
This is what you got to do. Come Sunday night, Ricky had better stories in there and was a way better show. But they, you know, some guys get it like that, and then some guys struggle through it. Ted DiBiase, a natural. Ricky had to work at it a little bit. Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
So you're talking about their shows when they go into comedy clubs and they do a show for a paid audience. And, you know, there's a lot of comics that aren't big fans of that because it takes a night away from them. And there's a whole different bunch of arguments. But in reality, a lot of wrestlers have been doing stand-up-y type things for decades because they've got to do their interviews. They've got to always be in character in front of audiences. So for that audience to want to pay that money to see them, it makes a lot of sense.
You know, if they're not going to do it in a comedy venue, they're going to find another venue regardless.
Sure. Right.
And the comics that are upset about that, give them free tickets and a meet and greet for free, they'd be first in line to go that night.
Right.
You know, and it's just like, hey, they're trying to make a living like everyone else, you know, and they're in a stage where they can't be on the wrestling circuit anymore. They've only lived their life on the road. That's all they know. They don't want to be at home.
Right.
They want to get back out on the road. And why not meet your fans? Why not do stuff like this or in public speaking? It only makes sense. It's the next step for them.
Like they are, you know? You're talking to wrestling fans. It's not like they're going and like wrestling fans show up at these shows that maybe wouldn't go to stand-up shows.
Exactly. So here's a great story. So one night, Hacksaw Jim Duggan's wife came up to me, and she flat out said to me, okay, you don't tell any more stories about wrestling anymore because you do comedy and Jim does wrestling. So stick to the comedy. And she gave me shit. And I was like, what the fuck? You know, like I was so angry because it was just such a stupid argument because even though I'm opening for Jim Duggan, nobody's there for me. Everybody is there for Jim Duggan.
Right.
And no matter how good I do, the minute he comes out and goes, oh, he's won the audience over and he's not going to lose.
Right.
He doesn't even realize that.
Well, you know what's I always I think it's sort of great now that there isn't a lot, like the curtain has been drawn back so much in wrestling these days that a lot of the times it's sort of like when I saw the Ricky Steamboat show and he was talking, he was just saying it's so much better now that once they went from like, oh, we're a real sport to we're sports entertainment, so they could sort of drop their characters when they were out in public. Because in like the 80s and the 70s, if you met Roddy Piper in a bar, you weren't meeting Roddy Piper, just the guy with a wife and kids who lives in Oregon. You were meeting Roddy Piper, the guy that you just saw in the arena. And if you shoved him, he has to stay in character, and he has to beat he has to, you know, threaten to beat the shit out of you. It's like when the story Ricky Steamboat tells is like, I guess after some match or something like that, he goes to like a 7-Eleven to pick something up, and he's in one of the aisles, and then he notices the door opens, and then Ric Flair shows up. And at this time, both him and Ric Flair have like a big feud going on, and they're supposed to hate each other, even though they're best friends. And so Ric Flair comes in with all these fans are with him, and then Ricky Steamboat immediately has to go from, hey, there's my friend Ric Flair, to Ric Flair, I'm going to fucking kick your ass when I see you next time at this arena, at this town. And it's just this. So now it's just like it's like Hacksaw Jim Duggan or Jake the Snake doesn't have to show up and be Jake the Snake. He can just be Jake Roberts, the guy, and he doesn't have to be the character anymore. Which I think
that's the difference between wrestling and stand-up is stand-ups actually hate each other. It's not a...
Yes.
Yeah, but we will still work with each other. We will still work with each other.
Yes.
It's sort of like, I mean, think of how many times that you've been on a show where you'd be like, I don't like that guy, but I'll work with him. Wrestlers are the same way, where they're like, I don't really like this guy, but I gotta make some money, so I'll work with the guy.
Exactly. As long as you don't have to travel with them, I'll work with anyone. You know.
Yeah.
Do you think that wrestlers and like with comedians, do you think a comedian will pick whether they want to be a good guy or a bad guy, just like how wrestlers are either a good guy or a bad guy, and then they can change eventually at some point?
Well,
you know what I mean?
Okay, Casey, you go.
Well, yeah, of course. Like there are times in my career where I've wanted to be a more edgy comedian, and that would be like a bad guy because I'm trying to take edgy material that they're not going to like, force it down their throats, and make them laugh at it anyways. I would think that's a bad guy comedian.
I mean, I'm a bad comedian.
You're a total heel.
Yeah.
Look at you right now.
Yeah.
But
you're a total heel.
I think a good way to sort of look at it is like if you're on stage and if you do an edgy joke or a dirty joke, and that's the equivalent to like a kick in the balls in wrestling, and the crowd might start booing you, there's a part of you that says, well, do I want to win them back over? Or, I mean, I know some comics that are sort of like, once the show starts going downhill, it's sort of like once the show starts going downward, you're either going to try to climb back up, or you're going to be like, no, fuck these people. I'm going to start getting meaner, and I'm going to start getting nastier.
Right.
And I know some comics that are sort of like, you know, if you try to poke the audience with a bit of a knife, and then you stick the knife in completely, and then you start turning it around a little bit of just like, oh, you thought that was bad? And then I've seen Darren have a crowd turn on him, and then it gets dirtier and dirtier, and then he wins the crowd back over, and that's sort of like literally going from heel to, or from face to heel to face in one show.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
You know, that's
what Patrice O'Neill was amazing. I remember he came to the comic strip in Edmonton, and he would go up, and literally every woman in the crowd would want to like murder him because he was very misogynistic. He came out and he said, let's hear it from the ladies. And they'd go, woo. He goes, can we hear it from the single ladies? And they go, woo. And he goes, now the single lady's over 30. And they go, woo. And he's like, it's your fault. So then women hated him. But then by the end of the show, they were all standing up and cheering because he was just really good at getting people to hate him. But he was so good at making even if his point was just like you disagree with it so much, the way he brought it across, you had to agree with him, and it was always funny.
At some point, I think
I've seen Darren do that before.
I think at some point, and I think veteran wrestlers are the same as veteran comedians. They know that a reaction is a reaction, and whether it's good or a good or negative, it's still a reaction. And sometimes you're going for that, and sometimes you're going for a good reaction. And they know they can just push the knife just far enough to be able to pull it back out again. And that's the difference between, you know, a veteran and a non. And that's why I think in wrestling, it's very similar to stand-up because, you know, if you ask any wrestler that's 30 years in, all the mistakes they made, 2 years in, the stories are very similar.
Well, also that desire to be on stage or be in the ring, no matter like what, you know, it's sort of like these are guys that are driving like 2 hours to a show to like make $50.
Yeah.
And then I'm sort of like, well, you just fell through a table for $50 at a show in front of an arena of, I mean, that's another thing too. It's like we've all shown up to shows and there's like 30 people there in a place that's supposed to seat 200, and you're sort of like, well, do I do the show as if there's like 200 people here, or do I do the show that's as if there's 30 people here? And it's, you know, there's both sides to it because it's weird to see a high energy comic at a venue where there's no one giving him that feedback to stay as a high energy guy. As like I would be interested to interview some wrestlers going like, do you hold back and be like, yeah, you guys aren't worth me getting hit by chairs, you know?
So I just have one quick question. And that is, you've interviewed what, over 100 wrestlers now for your podcast, Casey?
Well, not wrestlers, but people involved in wrestling.
Yeah, right.
Wrestlers.
Yeah. Was there someone that you interviewed that you were surprised at how good it was? Like you thought they might be a little guarded or, you know, not so into it, that they were like, wow, this was really, really good.
Yes. The first wrestler I ever did was Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man.
Yeah.
And we'd spent the night before with him drinking at the hotel bar. Right. And so we got a lot of wrestling stories and got to know each other that night. And then the next afternoon, we did the podcast taping. And the first question I asked him was actually written by my roommate, Jeff McHenry. And I said, I need a really good first question that's going to be funny, but it's going to be, you know. So basically I said, all right. So the first question was something along the lines of this. I said, in all of your dealings as the $1 Million Man, in this year, 19 whatever, you acquired the services of one Nikolai Volkov for 1 cent from one slick manager in the WWF. I was like, do you think you got a fair return on that investment?
Right.
And he went, he looked at me and he went, is this for real? Is that for real? And I was like, no, it's a wrestling comedy show. I'm just kidding. Like,
Nice.
And immediately he started laughing. He goes, and then once he realized it was comedy, he goes, let me tell you this. He goes, I'll tell you one thing. I got more of a return out of Nikolai than I ever got from that dumb Virgil. And immediately he went into character, he improvised the scene, and came out with a better ending than I could have. And I was like, fuck, this guy's a pro. And he was just great throughout the entire interview and very, very giving.
Well, I mean, he started in like the 70s too, where it was like in the 70s, you know, it was you know, the idea where people try to pretend that wrestling is like a real fight is called kayfabe.
Yes.
And so it's sort of like it's sort of protecting the business and still acting as if this is the real thing. So it's sort of like, but so in the 70s and even in the 80s, it's like that kayfabe was still big, and so people thought, no, that's
huge
the real thing.
Huge for him. His whole image was built on kayfabe.
Right. And so you meet people where it's sort of like you're sort of like, I could sort of see him being like, is this guy for real? Does he, you know, this is a show, right? Right, youngster?
Well,
you dress up your hair.
Imagine what they used to do is they used to, like, Vince would say, okay, here's a card. I want you to go into a fancy restaurant, not 5 stars, but 4 stars, well, maybe 3 stars, well enough where they know who you are. And he goes, and just pay for the entire restaurant's meals. And say, I'm the $1 million man, and tonight your meal's been bought by Ted DiBiase, the $1 million man. And then just leave. And he would do that in New York City to get hype up, and people would be like, who the fuck? What the fuck? You know, like, I love that. That's total Kaufmanism, and it's absolutely brilliant and a brilliant way to market. You know, word of mouth goes far.
Yeah.
I mean, it just compares now to like the WWF days, like with the cage. I remember watching WrestleMania because my brother would make me, and like the cage and like Andre the Giant and all the. It's not as good as it was, right?
You know what? It is, but it isn't. Like, the matches are better, but I don't know. There's something that's great about 80s wrestling that's very cartoony and fun, and a Hulk Hogan match is a Hulk Hogan match. And you know, but you watch wrestling today, and it's so crazier and everything.
I think wrestling is like Star Wars, and that is, I saw Star Wars. I was 7 years old. It was the fucking greatest thing I ever saw. And if you started watching wrestling when you were 7 or 10, it was probably the greatest fucking thing you ever saw. So watching it now, even if you're a fan, nothing can compare to that idea of being that age and loving something that much. For a lot of people, wrestling and Star Wars would be something they fell in love with, the first real love of a sport or entertainment. And you can't get that now because we're all 40 and broken and not the same people.
I know, but you can find new appreciations.
Absolutely.
Like, much like you can find, like, you know, when I was a kid, Eddie Murphy was the man. Now Eddie Murphy still is the man in my book, but I could find other comedians on the way. And it's like that with wrestling. Like, I didn't get into New Japan Pro Wrestling until maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
But it is totally different from American Pro Wrestling. It is way more sports oriented, but the storylines are still great. It's still wacky enough, but the wrestling is so much better than the WWE wrestling.
Right.
And it's just the way it is. And, you know, it's a whole different product, but it's still pro wrestling. And it's like that with comedy, too.
Well,
if you showed an 8-year-old kid a video, like today, an 8-year-old, a video from the 80s of wrestling, and they asked him, what do you like more? I guarantee they would say now. The today's, the big budget, the big, you know, flash or whatever, because they're 8 years old and they're looking at it through a different set of eyes. And I know Dave is going to talk about the New Japan Wrestling. I've seen only a little bit of it, and it's like, it's fucking crazy.
I mean,
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really watch. I mean, I enjoyed the new product of AEW over New Japan, but I mean, I grew up in the 80s, and that's when I started watching. And I was one of those people that would just, but it's sort of, if you go back and you look at that old footage and you look at the old fans, and it's like they're young and old, but it is real to them. It's like they are. It's sort of like now it's sort of people just kind of sit back and go, oh, it's a show. We know that. But back then, oh my God, it is real to them. And now
it was still a debate. It was still a debate if it was real or not. I remember when I was a kid, there were still people like, oh no, it is real. But nobody nowadays is like, it's real.
Hey man, back in the 80s, Otto and George, someone stabbed the puppet, you know, like they were pissed at the puppet. They stabbed the puppet and he has a knife wound. I mean, people back then, they would fucking believe the puppet's real. So I'm not surprised.
I mean, even now today, I mean, one of my favorite things is to watch Hulk Hogan wrestle with trying not to use the N-word. So,
okay, all right. Okay, we got about 2 minutes to wrap this up, and we'll have you back on, Casey. We just wanted to talk specifically about wrestling, but you also have an album out, and you send people your way. How can they find that out?
Yeah, just go check out Casey Corbin on Spotify. I have 3 albums on there.
Okay.
So they're all on Spotify. Might as well go listen to them for free. Why pay? And, go to my YouTube page, Casey Corbin, Instagram, comedian Casey Corbin,
and your
everything
podcast,
else, Casey Corbin.
What's your podcast, though? Because this is wrestling.
Oh, my podcast is Talkin' Wrestling, Never Sleeps Network.
Okay.
So TALKN Wrestling.
This is Shannon Laverty on Laugh Attack on XM Radio with Darren Frost on Anything Goes. Do I want to say more? No.
Okay.
Whoa.
Oh, look at that background.
Yeah. All right. Can you hear us, Nug?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Wow. Fancy background.
Well, I've been doing a lot of dumb Zoom shows, like performing and improvising and stuff. So I can't just have my television or a bookshelf behind me. So I hung a curtain to make it look semi-professional.
Ooh, nice.
When you're doing an improv show on Zoom and you ask for a suggestion, just a flood of just like boom, 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 boom.
So
spatula.
With Second City, there's they do a webinar format, and then they have the audience as attendees, and so the chat is running, and you ask for suggestions, and they're like, there was one night we had like 500 people in there watching, and it was just like the fastest, and then you'd go, I saw lumberjack, hopefully.
Sex, lumberjack.
And then they have a video stage manager who's kind of like line producing the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so you can actually ask for a volunteer and they will raise their hand and like put a little hand emoji up, and they will promote them to be a panelist, and then they're on screen with you. Otherwise, they're not on screen at all.
Wow.
See, I find that really interesting because I think probably Zoom improv and Zoom sketch are probably the 2 kinds of comedy that I think would probably work in this format over stand-up, because at the end of the day, if it's a sketch or if it's an improv scene, you're just kind of like you're watching it like it's on television anyways. So it's sort of like you could sort of be like, oh hey, I want the scene in here with this, and then you're kind of watching it go on. Like improv and sketch people, that's the one thing. It's like even if you're doing a bad sketch, you have to finish it. So it's sort of like you almost can do it in front of a crowd with no audience at all. And then if it's going well, it's going well. But if it's not, I mean.
Well, and you still want that instant feedback from the audience, and that doesn't exist other than the comments going, haha. It's just very weird.
Right.
I'm taking a directing class at Second City, and for part of our class, I had to direct 4 people to do Second City archives over Zoom.
Oh.
And we had rehearsals over Zoom, and then we did the show, and it was very odd. Like I had to take a 6-person sketch, rewrite it for 4, make it be about Zoom. I tried really hard to just pick scenes that are just people standing and talking so that it worked over Zoom. Other people were trying to do that cinematic, like, oh, you're in the square beside me, I'm going to hand you this thing. And then that person goes, oh, thank you. And it totally didn't work because Zoom will not put everybody in the same place all the time.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah.
It's totally random. So
it would be funny, though, I think, because we were just talking to Casey Corbin, who does a wrestling podcast, and we know that, you have a long history of wrestling.
Yes, it runs in my family. It's genetic.
You were born that way?
I think so.
Yeah.
With a predisposition for theatrical performance of violence.
So we were talking about just the differences, of doing things without a crowd now, and I do think, on a side note, I do think it would be funny to watch a stand-up show, and if a comedian is so used to getting booed for a particular joke, even though there's no audience, he still acts like he was just booed. Like he'll tell the joke and be like, "Hey, what people? What's going?" But like,
oh my God, that's the wrestling thing right now. Like I say about when they train people in NXT, you put all these different kinds of meat through the meat grinder. It all comes out as hamburger. So all these people do their interviews the same way.
Yeah.
So they go when they walk in, they're like, "Please welcome my guest, Bill," and then Bill walks in and waits for the crowd reaction that's not coming, and then starts talking, and you just see him walk in like. Okay, yes, I'll talk now. Or at the beginning when they were doing these shows in front of nobody, they were doing interviews in the ring like, I'm going to say a thing that would get me booed. And then I'll continue. Like, they're waiting for the reaction. They're so used to giving the audience that space that some of them couldn't turn it off or never learned how to do it in the first place.
That's like any Zoom stand-up show that I've either been part of or seen. It's really, I couldn't do it. I tried to do a stand-up show, and it was just, first of all, I have to watch my own face, which was very, very awkward.
Oh, yes.
Tell me about it.
Other people's faces, but they're just kind of staring at their screen. And they might giggle a little bit, but it's just like it is so awkward to do stand-up on Zoom for me. I mean, if you can do it, good for you, but it's just too weird.
No, it's weird. It's weird to do sketch because the scene's supposed to get a laugh here, and waiting for it is too awkward. So you just barrel on through, and it's very weird. And then the same with improv. You're making it up, and because you're not getting laughs, all of a sudden you're like, I'm improvising a dramatic scene right now, and it's very like it doesn't make any sense.
Right. Well, and one of the things now is just sort of like who knows when the whole COVID thing's going to be over. So no one knows when that wrestling crowds are going to be able to come back, and so
they're an essential service, Dave.
Well, in Florida, but so is crystal meth dealers in Florida.
What was that line I heard today? Because everybody's like, Canada must think they're living above a meth lab.
Yeah.
And then someone else wrote, well, no, because if I've learned anything from Breaking Bad, I understand that the person who runs the meth lab has a basic understanding of science.
Yeah.
And that's certainly not the case. But like it's just such a tire fire, and we're watching it, but it's also sort of happening here. Like there were people at Queen's Park protesting with MAGA hats and saying fire Anthony Fauci, and I'm like, he doesn't work here.
Right.
Yeah.
That guy doesn't even go here.
Yeah.
I love Canadians that are like, oh, it's magical and wonderful up here, and there's no racism or sexism or homophobia. We're just magical people. And it's like, what Canada are you living in?
I'm not sure.
I posted something about Black Lives Matter, and then I get a message from a middle-aged white dude. I know you guys are all white dudes, and it's like, well, don't compare Canada to America because we're nothing like America. And I'm like, have you seen how we treat Native people?
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Who was Becky Johnson? There's an improviser from Alberta. Becky tweeted out something like, I never learned about our treatment of Indigenous people or our treatment of Black people or any of that in school. And I was like, I didn't. And I came to university. I knew one Black kid who was adopted by a Dutch family in my small town. And I knew 3 Laotian kids and the Chinese family that ran the Chinese restaurant. And the end. Yeah. And then when I went to university, I met Jewish people. I met way more Black people. And I was just like, I want to know everything because I never learned anything. Right. But there are people from my town that have never left that town.
Yeah.
Yes.
And don't think anything's wrong with the things.
But how big is your town that you grew up in?
You know what, it says 3,000, but I think that's generous.
Right.
That's
small. That's small.
It might be a lie. I've also lived in a place that had like 4 houses. And they called it a town, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it a town.
What I mean, it is sort of odd watching like wrestling today, just because they are still acting as if the crowds are there.
Well, and now there is a crowd, quote unquote, there, and it's all their trainees from their training center who have all been tested for having a temperature, and then the end, and then they make them stand all day in little circles, and then in between breaks they bring them out a chair and let them sit down.
Right.
But then again, that's weird because they always accuse WWE of pumping in booing and cheering to get you to follow along, to do what you want. And now the audience is literally people they're paying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the difference is.
Do you think it will ever go back to the way it was? Because I still don't think we're going to be having giant arena shows for a very long time.
I can't imagine, like, I mean, they might slowly up the limit of what the crowd can be, and by all means, make that take as long as possible. But the fact that, like, I think the hardest hit things are the arts. I'm not including wrestling in the arts, but I think the hardest, entertainment. But I think, and the entertainment industry is the hardest hit, and it will be the last thing to come back.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's the least important thing.
Yes, yes.
It's a frill. It's a luxury to be able to buy a couple tickets to go see your favorite band or to go see a couple guys crack jokes. But in our new normal, which is so weird to say, and in this new where we are now, we're not going back to the comedy clubs. I mean, to be honest, were we ever doing sold out crowds in front of hundreds of people? No, it was the same 15 people who came to the Alt Dot every Monday.
Yeah. That's why my favorite comics are the ones, because shows have been happening in Alberta, and I'm doing the House of Comedy in Vancouver in a few weeks. Yeah. And but it's funny because some of the comics will be like, I sold out all weekend. I'm like, yeah, at 25% capacity, which is like normal.
Yeah, it's one person at every table for 4.
Yeah, I'm always interested in the comics that were trying to convince club owners. It was like, don't worry, only 10 people will come anyways.
But that's us doing improv shows. Like, more people are coming to our Zoom shows for doing improv than would ever come to a live improv show.
And are you paying? Are you making money off of it?
No, we're improvisers. We don't make any money.
Well, but even like, would you make more money before all this happened?
It depends on the show. I mean, honestly, sometimes you're just doing a friend a favor and jumping on stage and doing whatever. But a lot of times, at Comedy Bar, they're really good about their improv shows they put on, and really good about paying the talent. At Bad Dog, they're the same way. Social Capital's the same way. But not every theater's the same. Yeah. And improv shows can happen anywhere. And honestly, usually you're just like doing it for a pal who said, I have a dumb idea. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Lots of people have been doing backyard shows here. I've been asked to do a backyard show, like where people just be in their backyard with their friends, and they'll hire a comedian and they'll get paid. Like,
now, go ahead, Darren.
No, do you think that indie wrestling might come back first because of size constraints than something like WWE?
Well, yeah, indie shows never really had more than 200 people anyway, because of the venues that would say yes to allowing the insurance coverage, that kind of stuff. But what's interesting about what Kathleen said is that there are a lot of backyard wrestling shows that are starting to happen, which is funny because a lot of these guys started as yarders and now they're back in it. But because they've learned so much doing indies and this new world of everyone's online, they're getting together 2-3 people at a time in someone's backyard, shooting a match and then doing commentary after, and then releasing it onto the end. I just got asked to do announcing for one. Yeah. So they're just going to send me a match, and I'm just going to go nuts. And I think that's hilarious.
Whether it's going to be successful or not,
who knows?
Who knows? It sounds fun. Like if you love doing it, that's the whole thing. It's like it doesn't matter what the end result is if you're having fun doing it.
Well, and if the bonus would be if anybody could make money doing anything.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's you remember. This is just another example of how much I think the crowd is important for both the comedy show and a wrestling show. I mean, you remember WrestleMania 18?
Oh, I do, for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
It's the Hulk Hogan and The Rock match.
Okay.
Now, just through what I've read and interviews I've seen, apparently, The Rock was talking to Hogan about, hey, how do you want to block this match out? How do you want to do it? And then Hogan was constantly like, let's not worry about that. Let's call it in the ring. It's like, what's the point in setting up this whole match of just like, you do this, I do this, you do this, I do this. If the crowd is going to turn on, like they didn't know who the crowd was going to turn on. Because at the time, The Rock was
they were going to cheer for one or the other. Nostalgia-wise, you think they're going to cheer Hogan, but he's a bad guy, so you don't know. And then The Rock is super popular, but people were getting sick of him at that time.
Right.
So they literally were going out there without any idea of what that crowd was going to do, and they improvised.
Right, and also, and another thing too is like Hogan hadn't been up to Toronto in like 10 years, and Toronto is notorious for loving heels.
Yes.
Bad guys would always get cheered more than good guys. or these big nostalgia pops. I mean, it was
they always call it Bizarro World on commentary. Oh, right, Toronto's really Bizarro World.
Like Hogan, I think after Mania, didn't he go to Montreal when he got like an 8-minute standing ovation?
Yeah, because he's Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and he hadn't been to Montreal in like 20 years. And so that's just one of those weird moments where it's sort of like, it's like how crucial a crowd, like, because, you know, I mean, as an improviser or as a stand-up, if the crowd's not going along and be like, okay, well, let's go this way, let's go that way.
Wait, who won that one then? I don't know anything about it. Who won that one?
Well, what's funny is that The Rock won the match, but Hulk Hogan went over.
Yeah, Hogan, sort of like, the crowd, they didn't care that The Rock won, and The Rock left the ring, and Hogan got like a half-hour standing ovation, if I'm not wrong.
Right, and then
it was insane.
And then that was the match where Vince McMahon was like, we're going to make Hulk Hogan champion again, because the Toronto crowd almost tricked him into thinking Hogan was going to be another draw. But then as soon as they got out of Toronto and out of Montreal, then people started booing Hulk Hogan again because they were sick of him and they didn't, you know, and so it's just this weird dynamic that we are constantly on the fly.
Hulk Hogan's big in Canada.
He was, but his comments may have changed that. He may be a heel now for everybody.
Yeah. The sex tape didn't go over very well.
Have you seen it?
Yes.
Is
God.
it disgusting?
Huh?
Is it gross?
Well, it's shot on like a security camera in this guy's in Bubba Love's bedroom, who's like a radio personality in Florida, of course. And there's one part where Hulk Hogan sort of spins a bit, and man, that guy's he's doing. Talk about those 24-inch pythons. Let me just say that
he's doing well.
Yeah, enough said.
He's doing okay.
Well, like Screech's. That's like Screech's sex tape. He's apparently got a big, but he's Screech.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's what was when Hulk Hogan went to court. He said that when he's playing a character, it's like Hulk Hogan has a 10-inch penis, but Terry Bollea, my real name, he doesn't really.
Yeah. Well, we got a couple more minutes. What anything else you want to ask, Dave? Because I know you had a list of things.
Oh, you've watched the Dark Side of the Ring shows?
I have, yes. Actually, it's really funny because I got called by them and they asked me if I wanted to be Paul Heyman for their show. And then I said, oh, that's cool. I'm union. And they were like, ooh, see you later.
Right.
But they called a lot of indie guys I know to be the wrestlers for the dark
in the ring and stuff.
Yeah.
Was it Channing Decker got to be Chris Benoit?
Yeah, Decker was one. Tyson Dukes was one. Mark Wheeler was on it. Puff.
My kid fucking hates that Tyson. Oh, my kid hates that Tyson.
Well, your kid hates me.
Yes.
I get a lot of kids hate me. I've got a birthday message I have to send to a kid that hates my guts. Her mom asked me if I would send a birthday message to her, and I'm a hated manager in fabulous Barrie, Ontario. And I'm just going to stare into the camera and just go, happy birthday. Like
my kid. So I took my kids to an indie wrestling thing, and my middle child Austin went fucking nuts. He stood up and screamed, and 3 matches stopped and had to address him screaming. Like one kid, like Tyson had to go over and tell him to shut up. 2 other wrestlers. I'm just at the look of like, oh my God, he's a psychopath. He just wouldn't stop. It was great, and all the audience loved it, but I'd never seen that from him. And it was like, honestly, the best money I ever spent in any entertainment for my kids was indie wrestling.
It's so fun because I think indie wrestling really gravitates toward that 1980s thing where everybody had a second job, like the wrestling garbage man and the wrestling.
Right. Oh yeah.
And you know, there's characters, there's fun, but also I think everybody there understands their part in it. Like I'm here to boo the bad guy and cheer for the good guy.
Right.
And if you don't know, if the crowd doesn't know who you are, it's your job, if you're a bad guy, to make them hate you so much that it doesn't matter who is coming out that curtain. They're going to love that person.
Well, I've been to an indie wrestling show when I lived in Los Angeles. I went to one. It's like, I don't know, it was some small town in California, and it was, I don't know anything about wrestling, and it was like so much fun. It was like one of the best nights I've ever had.
It's such a variety show of nonsense, and I always say it's like watching very, very, very good professional stuntmen do their thing, and then they're gonna act, and they're not good at that.
I have one other quick question, and that is, it was also about Dark Side of the Ring. So we kind of sidetracked there. But the last episode of season 2 is obviously about Owen Hart.
Yes.
And there's a bit of a controversy there that the family doesn't want him to be in the Hall of Fame. And I just wanted to know what your 2 cents about that is.
I think going into that episode, I was like, well, he certainly should. I mean, that the WWE Hall of Fame is nonsense.
It's like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
It doesn't.
People that, you know,
it's just a night. It's not even a room. It's just a night, right?
It's a night. It's a ceremony, and he wouldn't be there. But also, it's just an excuse to sign guys to contracts and make some new merch with some guys that they don't have merch for. It's action figures and stickers and T-shirts and whatnot. But I think going into that episode, I was like, well, she should let him in. And then she got to say her piece, and I went, oh, no, I might be siding with her now.
Yeah, it's funny because I had the same reaction. I have no history to any of it. I'm not, like I said, a big wrestling guy, but I love the background to it. And I was the same way. I'm like, why wouldn't she want? And then as soon as she pleaded her case, I was like, yeah, how can you really argue with that?
I mean,
and you can't.
Well, and for about a good, I'd say 5 years or so, I listened to a couple of Vince Russo interviews, and I thought for the longest time, because he would always be like, oh, the same people that would do Sting's, descending cable rope thing. They did the ones for Owen Hart, which turned out not to be true. And there was like a lot of, they literally took economic safety measures away from it.
Yeah.
And it was just, a real nightmare. And it's a Canadian show. It's on Vice, and it just got asked to be for a 3rd season. Mm-hmm. And it is one of those shows where, like, the story, the subject isn't that important, but
it's like a great music documentary. I could care less. Like, I watched a Backstreet Boys documentary. I'm no fan, but the behind the scenes was interesting enough to, it was a good documentary, and that's the key to all documentaries. It doesn't really matter what the subject matter is if it's well done.
And the good / horrible thing about it is there is no shortage of dark stories from the world of wrestling to be included in this. My honest to God, the Dave Schultz, I would listen to Dr. Death Dave Schultz talk all day. That guy is not a character. He's a real human being inside and outside of the ring. And the fact that he became a bounty hunter after he busted the eardrum of a guy from 2020 is bananas.
Yes.
Now you were the episode, if you get a chance to watch it, I recommend anyone. It's the episode called the slap that's heard around the world.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
And John Stossel is still such a piece of shit.
Yeah, he's garbage.
Like he's totally the fun police. And it's sort of like, even when in the 70s, 80s, 90s, it was just like, it's sort of like, it's all those people that would always be like, hey, Milli Vanilli aren't really singing those songs. But people would go to the Milli Vanilli concerts and we'd be like, yeah, we know, but we're still having fun. It's like even fans know it's not real, but we're still having fun doing it. And he's like shitting he's just shitting on fun.
My friend RJ City, fantastic wrestler, has been doing stand-up, open for Mick Foley doing stand-up in Buffalo. And Foley just tells stories, but RJ's like, if I'm doing stand-up, I'm writing some bits. And one of my favorite bits that he wrote is like, it's as if wrestling, I always say it's like Santa Claus. Just pretend it's real for the kids.
Yeah.
But he says it's like going to a magic show, and fans take it so seriously. So he's like, some of these fans that take it so seriously would be if they went to a magic show and the magician goes, I'm going to saw this lady in half. And then they all nudge each other and goes, I know how this is done.
Yeah.
He's going to saw this lady in half. But then he pulls out the saw and starts cutting, and blood goes everywhere. And he actually saws a woman in half. And these people would go, hey, you're not very good at this. You're actually sawing a woman in half. And then he would go, I'm one of those real magicians. Respect the business.
Yeah, exactly.
But people get so wound up about this fake thing. And it's the reasons people fight are fictional. The physical stuff they do in the ring is very real. You can't.
Oh, very real.
You can't really pretend to fall 15 feet to a concrete floor like that. Right. It's gravity. I don't know how you can pretend to do that. You get so wound up about it, and it honestly doesn't matter. And the proof of it is that they're doing shows for no one. You think you're so important to this wrestling, and they're doing shows in an empty room where you're not, and the show is going on.
Right. Well, and also it's sort of like, a guy like, I think John Stossel deserved to get smacked in the head. It's like, first of all, if you saw Dr. D. David Schultz, he's clearly not all up there in the first place. But it's sort of like John Stossel goes up to him and says, I think what you're doing is fake. And
what do you expect?
It's of someone sort of yelling at you that, the dinosaurs are fake in Jurassic Park. It's sort of like, and then it's the equivalent, it's sort of like, don't talk to David Schultz. He's either about to go to the ring or he just left the ring. And on another note, there's been a couple of times where I've opened up for Darren Frost. And after Darren gets off stage, I've had people come up to me and go, hey, and this is literally like a minute or 2 minutes after the show. And the people come up to me and go, hey, can I speak to the headliner? Is he still around? And I'll be like, give him about 10 minutes. It's like
you don't want to talk to him just at the grocery store.
Yeah. No, but I mean, like this fucker gets so wound up. I'm like,
sure.
Listen, you can talk to him if you like, but just remember what happened to John Stossel, okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
If you tell him one of his stories isn't real and is fake, all right, go ahead.
I'm breaking your eardrum.
When I saw Darren at the Barrie Wrestling Show with his kid, it was the calmest I've ever seen Darren Frost in my life. And his kid was freaking out. And I'm like, I know where he gets it.
Yeah, that ain't skipping a generation. All right. Well, thanks, Nug. We appreciate you coming by. That's the way it is.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be days on the show where both of you are talking about how you can be a better person, and I'll be completely left out. So
Exactly.
Like, what?
Yeah.
What? You know what's funny? It's my ex-girlfriend, who I'm still, we're in communication with. But anyways, she's making.
Please leave this in, please.
Oh yeah, it stays in.
That's important, right?
Yeah.
She's making a bunch of COVID masks. Her name's Linda. She's amazing. I think she's great. But she's making a bunch of COVID masks, and she gave me a few. And at one point, she's sort of like, she's asked me, have you been cleaning your masks? Have you been boiling them? Have you been drying them? And I was just like, no, not really. And then she's like, they're masks. They're going against your face. They're like your underwear. You got to change them every day. And then I was like, you change your underwear every day?
Oh, dang.
I was like, what?
You wear underwear?
Yeah. On your face? What?
Yeah, if I get out of the shower and there's a pair of underwear on the ground, I'm wearing that underwear again. If I have to shit in my pants for me to lose a pair of underwear.
Christ. I know a lot of girls that have become artisan mask makers. Who knew that was going to be a new career?
I thought you were going to say you knew a lot of girls that were shitting their pants. But
A couple.
Sure. And the dudes that are into that, we know some of those.
Yeah.
I was watching Flavor of Love again, and that lady that shits on the stairs.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I have a quick question. Okay, when they do they show her shit on the ground?
You think they do? Yeah, I think it is.
I vaguely remember it being like Flavor Flav being like, "There's a turd over there."
Yeah.
There's a dookie. Yeah.
It reminds us. There was one moment, and I don't know if when they actually showed the turd on that episode of the show.
And let me tell you something. He knew what time it was then.
yeah. It's time to sort of start getting rid of that lady.
When the big hand hits 12 and the little hand hits 12, go take a shit in the toilet.
All those shows are on Amazon Prime, by the way, if you want to watch them again.
I don't need to. But the one thing, it was like a wife swapping show. I remember one scene.
Yep.
Where they took, they took the wife out of the city, they brought her to the country, sort of thing. Yeah. And so this one wife has to clean a barn one day, and so the woman sort of looks over is in the barn. She's like, "Oh, look over there! Look at a big pile." So there's this big pile of like horse manure. And then so the camera pans over, and they do that pixelated blur thing over the shit.
Why?
They want to show like a real graphic in focus picture of shit.
Yeah.
And they're sort of, so they blur it out or they pixelate it.
So the kids don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, because nobody shits, right? Everybody's seen shit.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same reason when they pixelate Japanese porn. It's like, okay, we all know what it is. That's not really a big.
I know. I was so disappointed the first time I was with a Japanese girl.